Another important element of the map is the compass rose. And the compass rose gives you really two important pieces of information. One, it gives you true north, and true north is a star. The GN is a grid north, which is a north-south line along the edges of the map. This would be this line is the grid north, which is usually pretty close to true north. But our compasses, the way we go out there and measure distances, we use a compass, and compasses point to magnetic north. So this is magnetic north, and the difference between true north and magnetic north is called a declination. So there's declination. And so the declination in this case for this year, which is 1981, was 16.5 degrees. So when you're out in the field and you're measuring using your compass, you need to correct your compass by that declination so you can use maps like these. So that's another element there. Other things that topographic maps have is usually on the edges they'll tell you the name of adjacent topographic maps. So the Graniteville is kind of to the southwest of this one. Just to the west is the Sierra City map. To the northwest is Gold Lake. To the north is the Clio Quadrangle. To the northeast is Calpine Quadrangle. To the east is the Satley Quadrangle. I've actually been out there. And to the southeast is the Weber Peak Quadrangle. Now for the problem you're at, we're going to be looking at two quadrangles, and I've given you the PDFs of these quadrangles, so I want you to download them. Remember, you're not going to print them. You're just going to kind of navigate like I was doing on that Haypers Creek quadrangle that I was just showing you. And you want to figure out whether the New York, the Palmera, or the Clark Fork quadrangles, whether they're 15-minute series or 7.5-minute series. Then you want to figure out the northern latitude, what's the top of the map for both of these, and the southern latitude for both of these. And you'll do the same thing, just like I kind of calculated the angular distance, you want to figure out, what the angular distance is between these. And then you'll do the same thing for longitude on the right or eastern side, and on the west or left side. And then again, you're going to calculate the angular distance for that as well. So that's using the Palmera and the Clark Fork quadrangles in Idaho. Now, let's just look at this Clark Fork quadrangle. All right, so here's the Clark Fork quadrangle, and they're asking us to look at the gravel pits. So if we go back and look at that question, on this Clark Fork quadrangle, what is the latitude and longitude of the gravel pits in the northwest quarter, the northeast quarter of section 16, Township 56 North, range 2 east. So when we look at these, you can see over here, I have the range 55, range 56. So it's going to be to the north over here. And it's going to be range 2 east, and it's section 16. So if I look down at the bottom, I see there's range 2 over here. So it's somewhere in here and to the north of this line. So I got to find section 16 in here. And here is section 16. And then I see the gravel pits up there. So that's how I can locate these positions. By knowing the township and the range, I can navigate, because I know I'm to the north here in Township 56, and I know I'm in this range over here, range 2 east, and then I want to find section 16, and I said it was in this northwest quarter up in here. And I'll explain how that works in a little bit. So for the latitude and longitude, note that this coincides here to this 12.5. So what does this mean? So if I go down to the bottom of this map, I see that I have 48 degrees 7.5. So that must mean that this number here is 48 degrees 12.5. So that would be my latitude, 48 degrees 12 minutes 30 seconds. That's where the gravel pit is in terms of latitude. For longitude, I would go down here and I see that I'm 12.5 as well. But I start off really over here at 116, 7.5. So this is 116, 12.5. So you would say the longitude would be 116 degrees, 12 minutes, 30 seconds. And that coincides to these gravel pits right there. All right, so that's one way you can estimate latitude and longitude. And then the other one we'll talk about is the public land survey. And that's this next part right here. And so that's where we need to kind of look more into. We sort of explained it a little bit, but let's go a little bit more in detail into it. So one of the things about these public land surveys, they have these baselines, and these principal meridians. And so you're either going to be measuring, so if we look at this figure here, so note that this is the principal meridian. So we're either going to go west or east, and those are going to be the ranges. Range 1 west, range 2 west, range 3 west, range 4 west. So you saw on our map here, we're range 2 east here, range 3 east over here. So that would be an example where I'm going range 1, range 2 east, and range 3 east would be over here. So the ranges go east and west of this principal meridian. And then the townships are going to go north and south of a baseline. So Township 1 north, Township 2 north, Township 3 north, and so on. And then it's Township 1 south, Township 2 south, and so on. So it's a grid. And then remember that each township and range, in this case Township 2 south, range 2 west, each township and range is broken into 36 boxes of equal size, or 36 square miles. So 6 miles on a side, 6 miles on a side. So 6 times 6 is 36. And then that, which means one section, like the section 13, that is 1 square mile. So there's 1 mile, 1 square mile, which is 640 acres. I have down here 640 acres. But 640 acres is a large area, and we can subdivide these areas by quarter sections. So I can divide one section into 4 quarters: a northwest quarter, a southwest quarter, a southeast quarter, and this would be the northeast quarter. And so that would mean that each of these quarter sections is 160 acres. That's still a lot of area. Now, if I take a quarter of that section, each one of these would be 40 acres. And eventually, if I separate these again into quarter sections, one of these would be 10 acres, right? So that's kind of how we break these down. So that's why when I was looking at those gravel pits, if we go back to, I said it was the northwest 1/4 of the northeast 1/4 of section 16. So the northwest 1/4, and remember this bigger box is a northeast 1/4, and then we said it's section 16. So let's look at our map here. And so on section 16, note that the gravel pits are here. So that's a northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 16, right? So that's how you can locate these positions. So a little bit, so now you can go back to your map. So we're looking at the Clark Fork, and try to find the township destinations on the west side of the map, and also the range destinations on the north side of the map. So look for those, and I showed you those already. And then in this case, you want to navigate in your Clark Fork Quadrangle to find this boat ramp, which is in section 2. This boat ramp is in the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter of section 2. So that's down here. So there's our boat ramp down here. So section 2. So it's in the, so if I divide this section 2 into quarters, it's in the southwest quarter. And it's also the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter. So that's how I can find that boat ramp. So your job is to find this White Delph mine here using that same method of quarter sections, and then the section itself. And then don't forget about the township and the range designation. All right, so you'll do that for this section here. And you'll do the same thing for Howell Mountain and Porcupine Lake. So find those portions on the Clark Fork map. Now the next section here deals with gradient. And gradient is a slope. And the closer the contour lines are, the steeper the slope, the farther apart the contour lines are, the more gentle the slope. We can do gradient from like one topographic line or contour line to another. But in this case, I picked these benchmarks. So benchmark 266. So that means that this point was surveyed and its elevation 266 feet above sea level. And here benchmark 24 was surveyed and it's 24 feet above sea level. So I measured the distance here using this ruler and I got about 1.5 miles. So that's how I got this number here. So I figured out the rise of the run, so the difference in elevation over those 1.5 miles, and it gave me for every mile along this path, you're dropping 161 feet. So that's a gradient, or the steepness of the slope. And so there will be a question on gradient. I added this I call this figure 10, but these are just different symbols that you would see on a map. And for example, here we have a bunch of different swamps. In fact, our Palmera map here, which is our next map, Palmera, New York, you can see that there's a bunch of swamps in here. So again, you're going to be using this for what the symbols are on this topo, like the mine symbol. That's one of the ones we're using, and you'll recognize that from one of the mines we looked at earlier. All right, so as we go along here, this next part of the lab is going to have you more or less look through the topographic maps, the Clark Fork Quadrangle and the Palmera Quadrangles. And you're going to find different points on these, and you're going to label them. But what I want you to do is I want you to answer these questions on the answer sheet. Now, actually, I think it's page 15. That's where it starts. So if we go back over here to page 15. Yeah, so here on page 15 is the answer sheet. So for question 1-1, you'd answer it here, 1-2 answer. So you want to fill all this in, and it kind of gives you clues to how you want to answer the question. So you'll check one of these, and it'll kind of make the things go a little bit more quickly when you're going through these questions. So again, this is page 15 for the answer sheet. So again, you go through these questions, and again, Farida should have a lab, so if you have any problems, maybe she can guide you. But it's pretty straightforward. It's just going to take you kind of hunting around through here and finding those different features that I'm labeling. One of the features I talk about is this school number 11 over here. You know, this Cobb Hill you'll look at. Huckleberry Swamp is the one we look at quite a bit. So just kind of look around and you'll navigate, and it'll get you more kind of accustomed and trying to find features on topographic maps. So you do that both for the Clark Fork Quadrangle and the Palmera Quadrangle. Then we go look at contour lines. So I already mentioned a little bit about them. So you want to read more about these, follow these instructions, kind of think about what you just learned by looking at the different contour lines on these different maps here. And then this next part is dealing with reading the maps, especially kind of looking at the scale. Earlier I talked about the fractional scale, the graphic bar scale, and the verbal scale. So make sure you go through this and try to understand this ratio, this fractional scale, because it's very common, and you can use this to convert between graphic bar scale and verbal scale pretty easily. At the Palmera Quadrangle, I measured on the real map the distance between this Huckleberry Swamp and school number 1. So if we look at that, here's that Huckleberry Swamp right here. And then school number 1 is way down here in the south here of the map. And that distance is about 12 inches. That's what I measured on the real map, because I actually have a printout of this. Well, I know that on this map, every inch, is 2,000 feet. Every inch is 2,000 feet for that scale, 1 to 24,000. Because all I'm doing is taking 24,000 and dividing it by 12, and that gives me 2, so 2,000. Now, because there's 12 inches in a foot. The other key number to understand is that 1 mile is 5,280 feet. That's another number you should memorize or write down. And so doing that, we have, since we have 12 inches, we have 24,000 feet. Well, we know that in 1 mile is 5,280 feet, so we're going to get rid of the feet. So I put this number in the denominator. I get rid of the feet, and I end up with miles. So it ends up about 4.5 miles, that distance from Huckleberry Swamp down here to school number 1. So that's one way you can get distances on maps. Now, I'll ask you to do sort of the same thing from Bear Hill, just south of Palmera City, over to Galloway Cemetery, which is sort of in the center of the map. And I hear, since you don't have the hard copy, I just give you the distance. So now I want you to convert that similar to what I did with the 12 inches here, but you're going to use 7.5 inches to figure out the distance from this Bear Hill, which is right here, to the Galloway Cemetery, which is up in here.